I think you'll find these tools to be positively invaluable as you endeavor to help Holmes solve these cases. Choose an icon to hear a description. The Baker Street Irregulars are an... This gives you access to the London Directory. In it, you will find every... I dare say, Holmes, I believe someone has left a note upon our door. Dear Mr. Holmes, please check today's Times. I think you will find something of interest. Signed, a friend.
Oh, no. What do you want? I thought I was going to have a nice, quiet day.
Somebody has asked us to check today's Times, and I was wondering if you'd be so kind as to tell me what you know about the mysterious deaths in the southeast.
There's nothing mysterious about it. The culprits are in custody at Old Bailey. The victim's body is at Bart's.
And what about the murdered lions?
What of them?
What did you find at the scene of the crime? Holmes wants me to record it precisely.
What did I find? 2 lions shot a number of times, lying on top of one another. Wagon tracks leading away from the bodies. Footprints in the damp grass.
How many footprints, Inspector?
Oh, who knows? I believe there were 2 sets of boot prints, if you want to get specific. They entered and exited from the wagons. Now, will that do it for your Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson?
Nearly. And what became of the wagon? Surely Holmes will want to know that.
Abandoned in Archbishop's Park. I had a man drive it over to our central carriage stables, largely so that someone could look after the horses.
Any motives for the murder?
Unfortunately, I haven't a clue.
Don't know a thing about them jungle-type lions, but I might be able to help you out with Stephen Lyons.
How so, Shinwell? Did you know him?
Well, he came in here from time to time whenever his ship was in port. A friend of mine up at Pentonville knew his brother. Says the 2 of them were lock-pickers of the ace variety. Anyways, just yesterday afternoon, Stephen Lyons comes in here with some red-headed fella. About an hour after Lyons left, in comes Derek Quinn, and he struts right over to this red-headed bloke.
Who might Derek Quinn be?
Don't know, sir. But I've never liked the looks of him, I haven't.
What about Thomas O'Neill? Do you know anything about him?
Don't believe I've ever met him. But from what I hear about the bloke, I'm surprised I didn't run into him in the slammer.
What have you heard?
It's only rumor, mind you. But he's suspected of every jewel theft from here to Timbuktu. And they says he'd 2-time you in the wink of an eye if it'd line his pockets.
Did the dispatcher show you the wagon, Holmes?
Not only did he show it to me, it revealed some very interesting clues.
Oh, do tell.
The wagon housed a cage, which of course was no surprise. The door was wide open. I found that the padlock had been sprung, left to dangle on the ring bolt. Blood was smeared all over the stairs leading in and all over the floor inside.
Oh, how perfectly nauseating.
It was. But what interested me even more was what lay in the corner of the cage.
What was it?
2 large leather collars. Attached to the end of each collar was a leather pouch. Both pouches had been ripped open and emptied.
What do you suppose it adds up to?
Time will tell, Watson. Time will tell. I was wondering if you could tell me anything about the death of your son's lions.
Oh, I wish we could. You know, Barry has traveled all over the world. And to think it would happen right here in London.
You've traveled with him, haven't you, Mrs. O'Neill?
Yes, I did. For all 5 years of our marriage. But I must say I'm getting a bit weary of it. I mean, really, Mr. Holmes, it's no life for a married man to go traipsing all round the world.
Of course it isn't. He should settle down and raise a family. My husband, Carol, could get Barry a job down at Rogers and Singer. Before I die, it would be nice to have one of my boys right nearby.
Where is your other son?
Last we heard, Thomas was in Oldenburg, Germany.
Germany? Royce Late's show just finished a tour of Germany, did it not?
Yes, it did.
Tell me, did you happen to see your brother-in-law while you were there?
I certainly did not. But me husband might have. I can't really say for sure. You see, we don't talk about Thomas much.
I don't mean to pry, but may I ask why?
Oh, it's nothing really. You see, years ago, Thomas loaned Barry some money when he was trying to put together his animal show. And now Thomas believes that Barry is forever in his debt.
Hear ye, hear ye. The Queen's Court stands in order. A pleasure to see you again. So it's the murder of the lions you're investigating, isn't it? Excellent. But first things first. Tell me, who murdered those unfortunate beasts? Remember, you're to choose either from your notebook or the directory. Right you are. Now tell the court, why did Thomas O'Neill kill the lions? Good work. Now for Thomas O'Neill's accomplices. I am told that there are 2 other criminals involved in this case. Please inform the court as to their respective identities. Do remember, you can choose only one at a time. But don't worry. I will inform you if you make an inaccurate choice. It appears you've been doing your homework on this case. Now then, what role did Barry O'Neill play in the crime? Quite so. Now tell us, what essential role did Stephen Lyons play in this crime? Excellent deduction. Now tell us, who murdered Stephen Lyons? Good show. But do tell the court just how Thomas O'Neill did the foul deed. What a ruthless chap, that O'Neill. Seems to have all kinds of blood on his hands. Now tell me, why did he kill Stephen Lyons? Double-crossed. Now there's a tale that Lyons didn't live to tell. Good show. You've done a most satisfactory job on this case. Court is recessed. Until the next time, of course.
Right this way, Inspector.
I'm a busy man, Holmes. I don't have time to be traipsing about London at your beck and call. Now, why have you called me here?
To help you with this case.
Oh, yeah? How?
By solving the double murders of Lyons and Lyons.
You know who killed the beasts and the chap on St. George's Road?
Yes, and I think you'll be very interested in learning why the deed was done.
Go on, then. I'm listening.
As you must recall, Inspector, 5 months ago, Thomas O'Neill, a jewel thief, escaped a London police search.
We almost had him.
Almost apparently was not good enough. Less than 3 months later, he was detained in Germany in connection with the stolen jewels of the Duchess of Oldenburg. Although the theft was similar to O'Neill's style, they found no evidence to hold him.
What has all this to do with dead lions?
I was just coming to that, Inspector. At the same time as the Duchess's jewels disappeared, Roy Slade's Wild Animal Show finished its German tour. Barry O'Neill, brother of Thomas, happens to be the lion tamer for the troupe.
Could Thomas have used Barry O'Neill's lions to smuggle the jewels into London?
Excellent hypothesis, Watson. I see you are learning.
Oh, thank you, Holmes.
But where did he put the jewels? Behind the lion's back molars?
No need for anything as deep-seated as that. Leather collars with pouches did the trick.
But if the lion tamer put the pouches on, why did Thomas O'Neill have to kill the lions to get them off?
Oh, I know that one. Because Barry O'Neill was in hospital with 2 broken legs.
Right you are, Watson. And that's why Thomas had to solicit the help of Stephen Lyons. Without a key to the cage, he needed the services of an expert lockpicker like Lyons.
Then who killed lions?
You mean the animals or the man?
The man.
Thomas O'Neill, so that he wouldn't have to pay for the lockpicker's services.
You know, Holmes, the fracture that Barry O'Neill suffered would have mended in 4 weeks. If Thomas would have had some patience, he would have been able to get his jewels back without any complications.
Ah, yes, Watson. Patience is a virtue. Unfortunately, it seldom comes hand in hand with stealing and murder.
Having spoken with Barry O'Neill, I can't believe he'd be a party to the killing of his own lions.
I don't believe he was. That wasn't part of the original plan.
I've got to hand it to you, Holmes. You've done a fine job on a most difficult case.
Thank you, Inspector. But it really was elementary.
One more thing, Holmes.
Inspector?
We know in the case of Mr. Lyon's death that the murder weapon was poison. Wherever did Thomas O'Neill get it?
Derek Quinn, Vipers Unlimited.
I certainly am glad that this case is shut. But there is one thing that I'm not certain of.
Yes?
Who did leave the note on our doorstep in the first place?
Elementary. Mary O'Neill.
The lion tamer's missus?
I believe she'd had her fill of circus life and was ready to settle down. When she suspected Thomas O'Neill and her husband were involved in jewel thieving, she knew it was time to get out.
Holmes, you are simply amazing. An extremely difficult case, and your score is absolutely perfect. I'm quite sure we could not have done any better.
This has been a very upsetting day for me.
Undoubtedly, Sir Simpson, you are referring to last night's theft of the 2 de Kuyper paintings from the National Gallery.
You've heard?
All of London has heard.
Tell us, what do you know of this unfortunate affair?
Well, about 6 months ago, July 1st to be exact, an auction was held at Armitage's gallery for the 2 new recently discovered de Kuypers.
I'd never heard of the artist before reading the newspaper this morning. Who was he?
A student of Rubens, and until recently, there were only 6 of his paintings in existence.
Who owned those 6?
4 were in the Louvre in Paris, 1 in the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, and 1 in the private collection of Lord Winslow Smedley of London.
How did you hear of this auction?
From Brady Norris, my head curator. I immediately gave my authorization to purchase the paintings.
Well, how much did you pay for the paintings, Sir Simpson?
£125,000. No paltry sum, to be sure, but decidedly less than what we had anticipated.
I had no idea art could be so costly.
People are awed by anything which they believe to be rare.
Indeed, and that is why I was determined to bring together the known de Kuypers for a show. The respective owners agreed, and in 2 days the exhibition was to have opened.
Tell me, Sir Simpson, how well was the de Kuyper show publicized?
Oh, it has been common knowledge for weeks.
And when were the other paintings to be hung in the gallery?
Tomorrow.
Where are the other 4 paintings?
The Louvre collection is at the French Embassy under the care of Monsieur Beauclerc, and the Rijksmuseum's de Kuyper is in our storeroom.
And Lord Smedley's?
We were to pick his up in the morning at his London townhouse.
Thank you, Sir Simpson. I think we have all the facts we need to begin now. I hope we shall be able to clear up this matter in a very short time. Mr. Armitage, can you give us the details leading up to and including the sale of the de Kuyper paintings?
Let me see, it was early June. I received a visit from Hiram Davenport, a London solicitor. He informed me that his client had 2 new de Kuyper paintings that he wished to auction.
I assume you checked the authenticity of the paintings?
Yes, as always, everything was in order. He had in hand a certificate of authenticity signed by Pierre Dernay, the well-known de Kuyper expert.
Did you meet Mr. Davenport's client?
No, I dealt only with Mr. Davenport.
What can you tell us about the auction itself?
Mr. Davenport's client set very strict conditions regarding the sale. The auction had to take place on July the 1st, and the public announcement was not to be made until June 23rd. Just 1 week to prepare. And as if that weren't enough, Mr. Davenport informed me that the paintings were to be sold as a pair. A pair.
Odd. Wouldn't the seller be able to fetch more for them if they were sold individually?
Unquestionably. It was a strange request.
And how did the auction turn out?
Due to the short public notice, many of the big bidders did not show. Mr. Brady Norris, curator of the National Gallery, was the successful bidder, as you know. I must admit that the paintings brought more than I had expected.
Do you have any idea why that was so?
Undoubtedly because of the energetic bidding from Sir Herbert Kaufman and Dame Agnes Smedley.
There were 4 of us on duty when the theft occurred. Our shift starts at 4 p.m., and upon our arrival, we prepare the gallery for its closing at 5. Now, on the day of the robbery, by 5:15, all the employees of the gallery had left for the day, with the exception of Sir Simpson and Mr. Norris.
Was that unusual?
No, sir. It is their custom to remain until the gallery is secured. I personally let Sir Simpson out through the main entrance at 5:30. Mr. Norris stayed on because he was expecting a delivery.
What time did the delivery arrive?
I'd say it was 5:45 when our Cummins and Goins wagon arrived. Charlie and I helped Mr. Norris and the deliverymen unload 1 large crate and 2 smaller ones.
Do you know where these deliveries were from?
Well, I'm not sure about the larger one, but the 2 smaller ones were from Jardines.
What happened after the crates were unloaded?
The deliveryman left. Charlie locked and barred the loading dock door. Mr. Norris went into the storeroom to check his shipment, and I returned to the guardroom.
Did you see him open any of the crates?
No, sir, I didn't.
What happened next?
At 6:30, Mr. Norris informed me that he'd locked the storeroom and would be leaving for the evening.
And you let him out?
Yes, sir, through the main entrance. Then I made my rounds through the office wing, checking all the doors to make sure they were secured.
And how did you spend the rest of the evening?
Looking after my rounds. I took the 11 clocker through the east wing. At about 11:10, all the paintings were in their proper place in Gallery 12. Then Charlie made his rounds, following the same path that I'd just made, except when he arrived at Gallery 12, the 2 de Kuyper paintings had been cut from their frames.
What time was that?
I answered his alarm at 11:35 and sent him to check the loading entry in the office wing.
Have you any idea how the thief got into the museum?
No, sir. The only keys to the outside doors are kept in the guardroom or in the custody of the patrolling guards. Sir Simpson and Mr. Norris are the only staff members who have keys, and even they only have keys to the inside doors. Well, that's all I know. I hope I've been of some help, sir.
The shipment of Nubian art consigned to the National Gallery was delivered to Wells' warehouse at 38 Blackfriars Bridge Road on the instructions of Mr. Brady Norris 5 days ago.
Excuse me, Dr. Murray. May I have a moment of your time?
Ah, Whitson. So nice to see you again.
It's Watson, sir.
Glad to hear it. Now, what can I do for you, Whitson?
Holmes and I are interested in the debris from the fire of Matthew Cole's hotel room.
Aye, such a tragedy. Everything was soaked with kerosene. No doubt this one was arson. Not much left to analyze. I found a key in his pocket. No number on it, though. Ah, but there was one other thing. A piece of canvas oil painting.
An oil painting?
Aye, it was smeared with Prussian blue paint.
Oh, may I have a look at it?
No, sorry. I sent it over to London University for me brother Mortimer to examine. He's a professor of chemistry, you know. An expert on paint pigments.
Sir Jasper, could I trouble you for a few moments of your time?
Always a pleasure to help, Watson. But I must admit I'm not much of an art buff.
Actually, I wanted to ask you about Matthew Cole, the chap that died in the fire.
Yes, well, he may have died in the fire, but according to my autopsy findings, he definitely did not die because of the fire.
What?
Not a trace of smoke in the chap's lungs. No, I'd say the nasty bump on his head was what caused his demise.
Ooh, my poor head. I believe I overdid it at Dame Agnes' bash last night.
Did you hear anything there that might be of interest to us?
I heard many things, Holmes, mostly from the chattering mouth of Pierre Donnet, world-renowned expert on de Kuyper. He has managed to do shockingly well for himself, considering 20 years ago he was a starving artist. But then his ship came in.
Whatever do you mean?
In 1872, he discovered the first de Kuyper in a church attic in Brussels. Soon after it sailed to Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, he began a whole new and extravagant life. I suppose that's why he can afford to keep a luxurious suite at the Langham Hotel.
Did his discovery of the de Kuyper catapult his own work into the spotlight?
Hardly. In fact, Donnet has never sold a painting done by his own hand.
You are mistaken.
Science does not lie.
Excuse me, gentlemen. Monsieur Murray, I am one of the world's greatest experts on De Kuyper, and I tell you this painting was painted by the hand of De Kuyper.
Mr. Beauclair, I am not an art expert.
You stated the obvious, monsieur.
But I am an expert on paint pigments and their chemical composition. And I tell you that any painting containing Prussian blue isn't from the 17th century. The process to create Prussian blue had not yet been developed. That paint cannot be more than 30 years old.
You don't know what you are talking about.
Good day, gentlemen.
Sir Herbert, were you not one of the bidders at the Armitage auction?
I was bidding for someone else.
For whom?
Can't tell you that. If they wanted to be known, they wouldn't have hired me, now would they?
What was your relationship with Brady Norris?
We went to Oxford together. What of it?
Was he a student of art there?
Yes, and a rather good one, too. Brady and I once discussed opening our own gallery. For me, it would have been a mere business venture, but for Brady, well, he always wanted to control an enviable collection.
Well, then he has realized his dream. As curator, he certainly must do that now.
Not really. Everything Brady does must be authorized by Sir Simpson.
Do you know a fellow by the name of Matthew Cole?
The poor bloke what died in a fire? Sure, he was a regular around here these past 2 months.
Do you remember when you saw him last?
He was in here just the other day. Drank quite a few with a heavy-set gentleman who walked with a limp and used a cane. The cane had a duck carved on its handle. How's that for remembering important details?
Hear ye, hear ye. The Queen's Court stands in order. So it is the National Gallery theft that brings you to my court, is it not? Well, then permit me to ask, who was the thief who lifted the De Kuypers from the National Gallery? Remember to choose either from your notebook or the directory. Indeed, it was the petty thief who perished in the fire. Now, who put Matthew Cole up to the foul deed? Splendid. Now tell us, if you can, why the De Kuypers were stolen. First theft, then murder. Ah, what a tangled web we weave. Now, please inform the court as to Pierre Donnay's involvement in the case. Such an unfortunate waste of talent. Now for your final question. Can you tell me what part Sir Herbert Kaufman played in this affair? Splendid! This was a tough case, and you cracked it. Excellent job. Court is recessed. Until the next time, of course.
The best way to begin, Sir Simpson, is to give you a factual account of what has happened. To start with, there are no decipers.
What?
They're all forgeries. Forgeries done by one very talented, egotistical man, Pierre Donnet.
But how can you be sure?
Prussian blue paint. You see, a scrap of the stolen canvas was analyzed, and it turns out that that particular paint pigment was not in use during de Kuyper's lifetime. Sticky wicket.
You know, Holmes, if Donnet was such an expert, then why did he use Prussian blue?
He was an artist, not a chemist. He slipped up. And fortunate for us that he did.
But however did you know it was Donnet? And why did he do it?
First of all, Monsieur Beauclerc, who has seen all the de Kuypers, insisted they were all done by the same hand. And interestingly enough, every sale was initiated by Donnet.
Surely no coincidence.
Indeed. Pierre Donnet is a very talented artist, but he couldn't make his living at it until he created de Kuyper. He wrote his biography, painted his paintings, and the art world went wild.
Making Donnet a very rich man in the process.
What happened next must have given Donnet great personal satisfaction. Brady Norris, not knowing that all the de Kuypers were forgeries, approached Donnet, the forger, and proposed that he forge 2 de Kuyper paintings.
Certainly he came to the right place.
One can only imagine the willpower it must have taken for Donnet to keep a straight face. Ah, but how could he pass up such an offer?
But why did Norris do it?
He had his eye on the directorship of the National Gallery, and he was hoping that such a brilliant acquisition as the de Kuypers would put him in the forefront after your retirement. Also, he split a tidy sum with Donnet right after the auction.
Oh, my.
So, everything went according to plan until you upset it.
Me?
Yes, by arranging for the de Kuyper show that would bring together all of the de Kuypers.
I don't understand.
You would be putting a spotlight on the 2 recently purchased by the gallery, and naturally the paintings would be compared. That was the last thing Norris wanted to have happen. Remember, he did not know that the other paintings were forgeries.
And no discrepancies would be revealed because they were all painted by the same hand.
Very astute of you, Watson.
Elementary, Holmes.
So Norris took part in the theft?
He masterminded it. You see, he became so fearful of being found out that his only solution was to remove the evidence from view. He hired Matthew Cole, a minor thief, to help him.
But how did Cole get into the museum?
In a crate Norris had delivered to the museum. He locked the crate containing Cole in the storeroom and slipped the storeroom key under the door. He then left the rest up to Cole.
Oh, Matthew Cole? Wasn't he the chap who perished in the fire?
Yes, a fire set by your own Mr. Norris.
Ghastly. Why did he do it?
To destroy the evidence and his only witness.
The most complex and devious series of deeds. I am speechless.
Brilliant, Holmes. This was a tough nut to crack.
Elementary, my dear Watson.
An extremely difficult case, and your score is absolutely perfect. I'm quite sure we could not have done any better.
Your housekeeper let me in. I hope I'm not disturbing you. I'm Richard Allen. You're not disturbing us in the least, Mr. Allen. Sit down. How may we be of assistance?
My brother, Courtney Allen, was the president of the Grant Arms Company.
Found shot to death in the alley behind his office on the evening of March 9th. My condolences.
Thank you. It was all so terribly tragic. Scotland Yard put it down as a simple robbery by person or persons unknown. But I don't believe it, and that's why I'm here. Mr. Holmes, will you please take on this case?
It has some interesting elements. Tell me, Mr. Allen, what sort of man was your brother?
Courtney was a dynamic, charismatic individual. Always busy, forever on the move.
I knew a chap like that in the service. He's quite a charmer with the ladies.
Yes, and so was Courtney. No woman could resist him.
Wasn't your brother married?
Yes. Poor Beatrice.
Then I take it he had other romantic involvements at the time of his death?
Well, yes, I believe he did, but I haven't a clue as to who the lady or ladies in question might have been.
With your brother dead, who has assumed the presidency?
Courtney's hand-picked successor, Philip Marlowe, the second vice president.
Doesn't that sort of transfer of power usually go to the senior vice president?
Well, usually. But the senior vice president is Lord Raglan, who runs the Devereux Street plant. He's a brilliant technician, but a most inept businessman.
Who inherits your brother's stock?
His wife, Beatrice. It's also very upsetting.
There, Mr. Allen.
I assume those are the personal effects found with your brother?
There wasn't much. A few folders, his keychain, his gold wedding band, and a small notebook. I did notice, however, that his pocket watch was missing. Anything of interest, Mr. Holmes?
They appear to be of a primarily personal nature. This one is empty. What does SP10 indicate, Mr. Allen?
I haven't a notion.
There are two entries on the day of your brother's death. Captain Egan, 8:30 p.m. The other entry is plant, 8 a.m., surprise. There also appears to be a note stuck in the back of the book. Written in your brother's hand. It says, meet me tonight at Spaniards at 10 o'clock, followed by the initials A.M.
Spaniards. I positively salivate over their paella.
Yes, it is very good indeed. Thank you, Mr. Allen. I think we have enough to begin our investigation.
I'm surprised you're wasting your time on this one, Holmes. It was a simple robbery. We found Allen dead in an alley behind Grant Arms. Wallet empty, gold watch missing, briefcase open, contents askew but not stolen. It's an open and shut case.
Was there anything else found at the scene that could be of use to us, Inspector?
I doubt it. Nothing but a couple of tin cans and an old cigarette butt.
B&H.
What does that mean?
You don't know? Why, then I must assume you also do not know why the end is evenly pinched all round. Perhaps you should read my monograph on the subject of 100 most commonly found cigarette butts. Mr. Lindhart, I understand Mr. Allen was scheduled to meet with Captain Egan at 8:30.
Oh, yes. Egan's the artillery officer for the Admiralty. I saw him leave for the meeting around 8. He said good night and went out to the back door to the alley where he always leaves to catch a cab.
Do you know what the meeting was about?
Not that particular meeting. But Mr. Allen and Captain Egan did meet often to discuss the progress of their new special project, Project 10. I did find it curious that the meeting on the 9th was scheduled for the evening. All the others occurred during the day.
I imagine a person in his position must have been extremely concerned about security.
Indeed he was. He called in Lord Raglan after he noticed several strange people hanging around the Devereux Street plant. All the technical data, blueprints, that sort of thing are housed there.
I see. I understand you are now secretary to the new president, Mr. Marlowe.
Yes. He was Mr. Allen's hand-picked successor, which perfectly illustrates the type of man Mr. Allen was.
What do you mean?
Only that there was no love lost between them, and yet recognizing Marlowe's outstanding business skills, he named him as his heir, so to speak.
Sorry, Lord Raglan isn't available at the moment. Perhaps I can help you. I'm his assistant, Walter Keogh.
Mr. Keogh, can you tell me anything about Mr. Allen's visit here on the morning of March 9th?
He came to see Lord Raglan, but he weren't here.
Do you know the purpose of his visit?
Now, I wouldn't be knowing their business, but it was most likely about Special Project Number 10. It being secret and all.
And when did Lord Raglan finally arrive?
He never did.
So then did Mr. Allen leave?
Not straight away. He said he had some details to attend to. I went back to the plant, and about a quarter of an hour later, Mr. Allen calls me and hands me a note. Says it came for Lord Raglan while I was down on the line. He wanted to make sure I got it to him. He also said I shouldn't mention his visit.
I'd appreciate it if you'd take me to someone who could shed some light on Special Project 10.
Well, that would be Richard Camp. But he left early today. He wasn't feeling well.
Eight months ago, Allen came to this office with the designs for the revolutionary new naval gun, most secret. The design was approved by the Navy.
What about the meeting you had planned with Mr. Allen for the evening of March 9th?
He never appeared, but you probably already know that.
Quite.
Actually, I knew nothing of what we were to discuss, but I've kept the wire he sent me that morning. Meet tonight, 8:30, your office. Call out the guard, pounce at 10. Quite vague, don't you think?
Does it mean anything to you, Captain Egan?
I think Allen was worried about security for project number 10. Of course, I put some of my best men on it right away.
Did you come up with anything?
Richard Camp, a development engineer on project number 10, was discovered bringing boxes and bundles to the French embassy. Emile Zobar, French military attaché, has his office there.
So you think Mr. Allen had information implicating Camp in a security breach of Project 10?
I did. Still do. But Lord Raglan, head of the project, assured me that Allen's security fears were unfounded.
You've spoken with Raglan since Allen's death?
Yes, we met on March 11th. As a precaution, he assured me he would remove Camp from the project.
Can you think of anyone else who might pose a security risk to the project?
Yes. For now, I have my men investigating Zobar, Van Schulenburg, Delgera, and Meskov. Their governments would all have great interest in our new gun.
And what have you uncovered so far?
Unfortunately, nothing. Yet.
We're sorry to inconvenience you, Mr. Camp, but we need to ask you a few questions.
Excuse me, beastly cold. Of course, I'd be happy to help. What would you like to know?
Specifically, why you were removed from Project 10.
Lord Raglan simply assigned me elsewhere. Since project number 10 was well along, he felt I might be more useful in other areas.
Is that all he told you?
Well, he also mentioned that my visits to the French embassy had been misinterpreted in some quarters.
What brings you to the embassy so frequently?
I am secretly engaged to Annette Zobar, daughter of the vice consul. Lovely girl. Unfortunately, her father, Paul Zobar, is not awfully fond of me. Her uncle, Emile, however, is sympathetic to us. Since I work for an arms company and he is the military attaché, my visits there are ostensibly to see him.
Have you ever discussed Project 10 with Monsieur Zobar?
Oh, no, I would never.
You should cut back on your smoking until you are well.
But I don't smoke.
Then to whom do these belong?
Oh, I bought those as a birthday gift to Emile Zobar. Burns and Hill are his favorite.
would you care for a cigarette? They're Burns and Hill's Imperials. A wonderful smoke.
Thank you, no. You really shouldn't be smoking in your condition.
It is nothing, just a little bit of a cold.
Tell me, Monsieur Zobar, where were you on the evening of March 9th?
Ah, yes. That was the night of Monsieur Allen's death. I was at Simpson's, beating the pants off of Alfie, the so-called chess champion.
Are you acquainted with a Mr. Richard Camp?
Oh, but of course. He's employed at Grant Arms Company, and he's secretly engaged to my beautiful niece, Annette.
Why must the lovebirds be so secretive?
Because my brother, Annette's father, has an inexplicable dislike for the English.
And you, Monsieur Zobar, do you share your brother's feelings?
Oh, mon Dieu, no! I admire you English very much.
Has Mr. Camp ever spoken with you about the special project on which he was working for grants?
Oh, never. Nor would I ever ask him about such a confidential matter. He has a profound sense of loyalty. That's why I admire him so much.
Hear ye, hear ye. The Queen's Court stands in order. So it's you again. Well, it's always a pleasure to have this court graced with your presence. So I see you're here to solve the murder of Courtney Allen. But weren't satisfied with Scotland Yard's robbery theory, I see? All right, then. Who murdered Courtney Allen? Remember, you're to choose from either your notebook or the directory. How right you are. Good work. Now, tell the court, if you will, why Courtney Allen was murdered. Good show. Now tell me, what was the significance of Special Project SP-10? By George, I think you've got it. Now tell us, if you can, what transpired at Spaniard's Inn. Yes, you've got it. Now tell us, what was Richard Camp actually doing during his numerous visits to the French embassy? Fine detective work. Now for your final question. A cigarette was found at the scene of the crime. Why, pray tell, was it pinched evenly all around? Excellent job. You've solved the case to my satisfaction. Court is recessed. Until the next time, of course.
Lord Ragland.
Most shocking, isn't it?
I must commend you for following your instincts, Mr. Allen. Because you doubted Scotland Yard's original findings regarding your brother's death, we were able to catch the murderer.
But tell me, Mr. Holmes, how did you solve this case?
In the first place, I found it unlikely that a common criminal would have overlooked a valuable gold ring. In the second place, simple robbery would not explain the missing contents of the SP-10 folder. Those documents were central to the murder. It then became a simple matter to cull 2 suspects from the customer list of Burns and Hill Imperial brand smokers.
Burns and Hill?
But that was the brand of cigarette found at the scene, and the list we obtained had quite a few names. It was fascinating to see the way Holmes narrowed it down.
You flatter me, Watson. It was nothing, really. In the first place, I knew the murderer had to be someone aware of Courtney Allen's habit of exiting his office via the alleyway. That made the most likely suspect a co-worker. Of the gentlemen on the list, only Lord Ragland and Richard Camp fit that category.
But how did you narrow it down to Ragland?
Elementary, Mr. Allen. Mr. Camp does not smoke. He purchased the cigarettes as a present for Emile Zobar.
But why did Ragland do it?
After learning of your brother's surprise visit to the plant, Ragland knew the proverbial jig was up. He realized Courtney had removed the plans for Project 10 from the safe, the very same plans he had intended to sell that night to the Russian attaché. The only solution was to kill your brother and reclaim the plans. Case closed.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Courtney may no longer be with us, but it does serve as a small consolation to know that his murderer will get his due.
Indeed. And we may all rest more easily knowing that England will suffer no more breaches of security at the hands of that traitor. Isn't that so, Holmes?
Quite, Watson. Quite.
An extremely difficult case, and your score is absolutely perfect. I'm quite sure we could not have done any better.